and welcome to Ag Talking Raw, where I talk raw about agriculture and other things that are on my mind. Good morning. It's something like 6:44 in the morning. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what time it is today, August 23rd, 2024. I just watched Cole the Corn Star's latest video on his profit and loss. I don't know what he called that. What did he call that? Oh, Mr. Cole the Corn Star. I don't watch his let's be honest, I don't watch much. My farm has a $1,358,000 problem. $1,358,000 problem. Yeah, I think there's a lot of farmers out there that have that same problem. We may have really good crops, or we may have piss poor crops. But there's one thing that we all have in common, and that is piss poor prices. Now, needless to say, it is an election year, and we've all gone through this before in election years. Some are worse than others. But I personally do not believe that these low prices are going to hang around forever. And you can hear me out on this one. Maybe I'm just some dumb farmer from New Jersey that plays in the dirt, but I will say this. There's things that are going on in this world that are actually quite devastating and will require these countries around the world, big countries around the world, to have to purchase more grain from elsewhere than their home country, or there's things that are going on in the world that are causing delays in export, and if any, increased expenses in export, which is going to cause people to just say, hey, you know what, I'm going to hold on to this a little longer, or we just don't have it, or oh my goodness. So first things first, we'll start in the United States. From what I saw, my dad had saw it. He's conveying some of this information to me. And that is, there was hail damage in one state where 400,000 acres? 400,000 acres were completely zeroed out. And I'm pretty sure that was in Nebraska. One county in Nebraska got completely annihilated. 400,000 acres of corn, soybeans. Then there was another county in the same state that was hit with 40,000 acres of corn and soybeans. So there's 440 acres of corn and soybeans. Now, for the most part, from what I've learned over the years as a farmer and doing these things, that 440,000 acres is pretty well divided 50-50. Some years it's 60-40 either way, depending on the prices. But let's just, for safety's sake, just say 50-50. The average yield in, I think, those counties is like 180 bushels to the acre. So that's really 40 million bushels of corn, and a quarter or a third of that for soybeans. That has not shown up yet in any projections for yield or yield loss, because let's face it, the crop tour doesn't go through those counties, and they don't look at the 440,000 acres that were completely annihilated by hailstorms. Now, I know that Iowa had some issues as well. They had rain, a lot of flooding, and I don't know how that looks now. It could be bumper crops right now. I don't much know. But I do know that Pennsylvania, right, the state right next to me, they have had some major drought damage. When I say major drought damage, buddy, I'm not joking. There's corn out there that is, half of what it should be or less. So that is going to drive local markets here up a little bit, which, yay. But again, then you look at what I've got going on. Was out in the cornfields. What a struggle we had all summer long, from the spring through the summer on corn. So almost every single acre, and I say almost every single acre, had this early problem. Everything turned yellow. It just did not look good. Went in with a with a fertilizer regiment to try and bring it out, and ultimately it did work. It did bring it out. Usually that's a shot of nitrogen, but this was different. Nobody ever gave me a straight answer. They're like, well, it looks like a zinc and a sulfur deficiency. So what do? We put on zinc and sulfur. How much we put on really wasn't much. I mean, I put on, it cost me another $79, just say $80 an acre to put down the zinc, sulfur, potash, and what the hell else was in there? Nitrogen, obviously, and yeah, zinc, sulfur, potash. So what I used was a product called K-Mag. K-Mag was, I honestly think that the K-Mag is quite a interesting product. It seems to do very well. That's what is that? Zinc. What is that? What is K-Mag? It is sulfur, magnesium, and I think there's some zinc in there, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyways, I'd have to go back and look and see exactly what it is. I know it's not, what's that other product that I wanted to use? Not K-Mag, but MES, M-E-S-Z. MESZ was pretty cool. That's zinc, magnesium, and phosphate, I think. Oh, whatever. I didn't use it. Didn't need to. It just wasn't on the docket of things to use. But anyways, I went through. We used the K-Mag, I used ammonium sulfate, and I used ESN, or extremely stupid nitrogen, all slow release type things. And I'm glad that I made that decision, because if I would have just used K-Mag and urea, as dry as it was, I think I would have lost all the nitrogen. But the moisture that is in the moisture that we did get when we got it actually allowed the AMS to stick, because that is a positively charged ion, and the ESN, which is the slow release, or polycoated urea. I think they call it polycoated. We used to be polycoated urea. Has a coating on it like a wax, and every time it rains, it will knock off, break down that wax and allow it to seep into the soil slowly. Never used it before. AMS, I used lots of it, but the AMS or ammonium sulfate brings in 24 units of sulfur per 100 pounds and 21 units of nitrogen for a gram. What I used was 30, I think it was 38 units of nitrogen as a top dress, which brought my nitrogen inputs up to 220 units for that corn. Now, I was scouting yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday and the day before, a couple of these farms, and we have what Cole, the corn star, would call tip back. I call it dieback. Just didn't fill the tips. Now, it wasn't for a lack of pollination. There was not a pollination problem with this corn. I do believe it was a moisture issue, and that corn, it pollinated clear to the tip, but it decided that it wouldn't fill clear to the tip on a fair amount of it. We did have some of the same issues. If you watch his video, you will. He did a very good job. It was a little long-winded, and I did finally decide to skip through some of the corns, because he went to every single field, did random ear pulls, and he I don't need to see every single field that he's doing these yield tests on. Now, I have done yield checks on my corn, and not this year, because I just decided, you know what, I'm going to use a foul word, but fuck it. Why should I? Every time I do that, I'm either grossly over or grossly under. I'm never accurate. Just never find a good representation of the field, because we have these things called deer here. So if you walk into a deer damaged area, which could total 5-6 acres on a field, say a 25-acre field, and you get 4 or 5 acres that are damaged, whether it's because the deer bit the silk off or they snapped the top of the stalk off, it's difficult. Or you get farms that they don't bother it at all, and you walk in and you do a yield check in what looks good and turns out to be okay, but then it's not at all a representation of the field, and you actually get a nice surprise of a 20 or 30 bushel increase in your projection. So I decided to forget it. I'm not even going to bother. Soybeans, on the other hand, that's a whole nother story, and he was correct when he, and we're talking about Cole the Corn Star. He went out into his soybean field, and there is no good way to project soybean yields. There just isn't. It's shoddy at best. It's, you can walk out into a field and the damn things will be up to your chest, and then the pod sets are quite sparse and sporadic. You can pull 5 plants out of an area, pull all the pods off, count the beans that are in the pods, and then, come up with your projected yield. I did that last year, and according to the USDA's official formula, I would have got 230 or 40 bushels of beans off of every acre that I farmed with soybeans that were planted in July, which is not ever going to happen. We did settle down, I believe it was a 36 bushel yield after soybeans. Decided not to plant wheat again because the wheat, it's poverty grass. When Jeff Ramone said, "Oh, this is poverty grass," he was right. It's like a 1 in 5 year win with that stuff. You're better off planting soybeans directly instead of the wheat, because if you plant the wheat, harvest the wheat, double crop the beans, and then weigh what you would have gotten in bean yield over wheat yield, and we'll just use basic numbers. Last year I think I ended up with 1356 was the highest that I got for beans. I got 4,000 bushels of those at that price. I only sold 8,000 bushels of soybeans because I just didn't have acres and acres of soybeans, and at 36 bushels to the acre, I just didn't have a lot of bushels of beans. But at $13.50 a bushel versus $4.85 a bushel for the wheat, if I would have planted the beans, the yield would have been here, at say 50, 60 bushels, and the wheat at 61 bushels is what I averaged on the wheat at $4.84, just say $4.85 a bushel. Bushel is 56 pounds for wheat, isn't it? 56? No, 60 pounds for wheat, 56 for rye. But 60 pounds for wheat, you can figure it out in tons. If you're from the rest of the world, we do it in bushels. Bushels is a measurement of volume. It's a volume metric, weight, and I learned something today from Cole. He said a bushel is 8 gallons. So if you understand measurements in the United States, they all stem from very small to very large, and say a teaspoon, so many teaspoons in a tablespoon, so many tablespoons in a cup, so many cups in a quart, pint, so many cups, two cups per pint, 2 pints per quart, 4 quarts per gallon, 8 gallons per bushel, and it goes on and on and on. And I know I had this conversation with Lord Muck when he was here. He's like, why don't you just do it by the ton? I was like, well, I guess we could, but it's not as precise of a measurement. Okay, I got 1.5 tons per acre of corn, or 2 tons per acre of corn. How about I got 220 bushels of corn per acre? 220 bushels of corn per acre. Now that volume is still the same. You can increase your bushels by never increasing the volume. It goes on weight, or you can decrease the volume that you get per acre in weight as well. So 56 pounds of corn in a bushel but if the corn is 58 pound test weight, then you get that much more. And so it's more of a precise measurement versus just tons. Oh, I got 1.289 tons per acre off of my corn versus, I got 220.35 bushels per acre. You can actually, in my opinion, it's more of a precise now. But anyways, it's just an argument. And they go metric ton, which is 2,200 pounds, versus a short ton, which is 2,000 pounds. That's how we go. That's just the way we do it here. But anyway, so back to the soybeans. There's really no good way of measuring soybean yield, or even corn for that matter. You can go out in the field and you can see, you can shuck back a bunch of ears and they look really good, and then all of a sudden you've only got a 52-pound test weight because some insect got you or some disease got you that you didn't catch in time to take care of it, or everything was perfect and you got 62-pound test weight corn. And it can all go for dog food because they just love that heavy grain for dog food. Don't ask me why, but they pay a little more for that, and you can make a little bit of money there. So for the most part, the marketing is where you have to be pretty slick. Now, let's go back to what's going on in the world that is causing the markets to fluctuate. So if you take 40 million bushels of corn out of Iowa, that's really nothing, right? It's only 440,000 acres in total. So just say 40 million bushels of corn out, and say you're going to take 15 to 18 million bushels of soybeans out of the equation. It's not really going to have a major effect on the overall market price in the United States. So, a penny or two is what that would boil down to, possibly. But then you go to, let's just say, Brazil and Argentina. So Brazil and Argentina, they sell to Russia, they sell their grain everywhere else. They are grain producing countries. They have burned down the jungles, pushed them out, and started growing row crops in the jungle where the jungles used to stand. Very fertile soil, and then it takes a lot of lime to get it up and where it needs to be, but once you do that, you get that soil up and running, you can produce decent yields of corn and soybeans. Now, I was told, and these numbers may or may not be accurate, but I was told that it's like a 10 to 1. 10 acres of soybeans to 1 acre of corn in Brazil and Argentina. This is years ago. Don't quote me. If you're from Brazil and Argentina, you may be on a 50-50 rotation now. I don't know. You may be on a 20-80 rotation, which is about right. And what's my sexy wife doing? Oh, yeah, she's shaking it. What are you shaking your ass for? Anyway, she's going to do her morning prayer. She's 2 minutes late. But with that being said, you're going to hell. Yeah, so these numbers, it doesn't even matter. 4 million acres of corn will never get harvested in Brazil alone due to floods. The numbers of soybeans have not been released, but this was just for corn, right? 4 million acres. They don't have the yield potential down there as what we do here, from what I've been told. I may be wrong. I don't know. But let's just say they get 150 bushel to the acre on that. 4 million acres. So let's do some stupid math here, because I just love stupid math. Stupid math is just projections. They're not accurate. They could go up and down. Huge swings. That's why I call it stupid math. So we go 4 million acres, and we times that by 150 bushels of corn. That's 600 million bushels of corn just in Brazil. Now, Argentina had 2 problems, and I'm sure Brazil had other problems as well, but Argentina had major drought. They had major drought, what do you call it? In the summertime, in the spring, when we were planting, they were under a major drought, and they were talking about zeroed out acres there. Whether they were able to come back in and plant again, I don't know. Argentina is lower in the southern hemisphere of South America. So they don't have the options and opportunities they say Brazil does if they have a problem that they can come back in and plant again. I know a Brazilian. He works right down here at Napa in between Milford and Frenchtown. His name is Sergio, and Sergio says, "Oh yeah, that we get a couple of crops a year, so they can plant corn, harvest the corn, and then plant beans behind it. It's a double crop type of a thing, and I know they do that down in Texas as well. They get two crops of corn in Texas. I think the first crop is the best crop, second crop is the worst crop. I could be backwards. I don't know. I don't live in Texas, and to be honest with you, I know that South Texas does not get high yields, 130 bushels, and they're doing well. That's what I was told by a person that I do speak to very rarely, but I asked some questions, and she was able to tell me that 130 bushels is a good yield for corn in Texas, South Texas. They grow mainly vegetables down there. So I don't know what happened in Texas this year. Was it major drought? I don't know. Was it wet? I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what's going on down there. But I do know that Kansas had some major drought because I watched the Peterson Farm Brothers. They needed rain. They just needed rain, and I don't think they got it. And I do believe that Kansas got hit with some hail as well when it did storm. So these things, all these little things, they add up. Now, the big elephant in the world is China, right? China. China's a big producer of junk. Of junk. Go to Walmart and buy anything in Walmart, and you will understand what I'm talking about. Everything in that store, I swear to God, is made in China. So China is in a major drought right now, from what I've heard. Now, they don't want to tell you about this because that will throw off, what their buying power. Oh, we've got the grain. Well, they don't have the grain because they can't grow it because they're in a major drought. So that should have an effect on the price. But when I look at it, and I'm going to show you here real quick what I use, and let's see. So beans are back up. Beans took a 20-cent hit yesterday. What a joke. Corn is up 2 cents right now. No, not up 2 cents. 0.2 of a cent. Corn is up. Right now, if I had corn in the bin, I could sell it for $4.17 to the people that I sell to, because they are in an area where there's a deficit. There's going to be a major deficit. They do not have a railroad siding, so they're not going to be able to bring it in on rail if they bought it cheaper elsewhere. There's nothing in the state of Pennsylvania that I saw that is very great. There's pockets, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing really great. So if I sold soybeans through them, it would be $9.70 a bushel. That sucks. And $4.17 a bushel for corn. That sucks. But it's not the... Oh, is that corn? That's corn. So right now, if I sold corn, December corn, September to December, $3.71 and $3.93. That's what the market is at right now. Under $4 for corn. We had to buy fertilizer, herbicide, and seed. Seed at the highest price it's ever been. Fertilizer has settled down from, say, 2021, 2022 prices, but it's no, was it 2021, 2022? Yeah, 2022, 2020, whatever. When they attacked in Ukraine, nitrogen was $1,100 a ton. Settled back down, but not where we would like it to be, obviously. These other specialty fertilizers like Mez and K-Mag, those are over $800 a ton. Now, you don't put a ton to the acre. You're only putting like, what the hell was that? I think we only put like 30 pound of K-Mag to the acre. That's all it really took. It's pretty concentrated, and it is very available, which is why I used it. But when you have all these high fertilizer prices, and of course the equipment prices and parts have gone through the roof, and I mean through the freaking roof, that you can't hardly afford. Well, you can't afford to buy them. I'm finding myself welding shit back together that should be thrown away and replaced. I'm finding that it's increasingly difficult to even buy hydraulic oil. I have these. My boys are just, Tim and Grant. I'm up their ass all the time. Like, hey, dude, you better watch. Make sure that if there's a leak, you stop and you get it fixed. Don't drive it home with a leak, because if you lose a gallon of hydraulic oil, there's $12. Lose 50 gallons and it's $60. Or no, 5 gallons. If you lose 5 gallons, it's like, five. How much is that? How much is that shit a gallon? A bucket of hydraulic oil is like $100. So it's $10 a gallon. No, $20 a gallon. It's stupid expensive, all of this stuff. And I had people rousing me about my Case WD 2303 having a bald tire on it. Well, I had the tire. I have the tires for it. It's fine, not a problem. But when you're spending $300 for a tire that used to cost $80, that's quite a bit of money. So yes, of course I'm going to get every revolution out of that thing that I can get. And I'm not just going to go throw new tires on it because I got spare income. Because I'm telling you right now, if you watch Cole the Corn Star and you don't like listening to him, just go to the very last 5 minutes of the video and you will see that he is going to suffer a significant loss. He's going to suffer a significant loss. And, maybe we're not all going to suffer a significant loss like him, but I can't see anybody, especially with the rent that he's paying, $279 an acre rent. That's the Iowa State average. $279 per acre for rent. Their revenue off of every acre is going to only be $820. So when you've got more than a third of it going to rent, and then you got to pay for planters, tractors, diesel fuel, fertilizer, seed, storage, trucking, lubricants, parts, labor, what else is there? Tires, all this stuff. He's right. He's not going to make any money this year. He's fortunate that he has a very popular YouTube channel and sponsorships from people, that he does, which he better get out of that stupid house and start making farming videos, because those sponsorships will go away and he won't have the money to do it. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. I don't really care what he does. It's, that's his business. I got my own to deal with. It puts a damper on the pamper for the year. Now, I'm fortunate enough that we do have the hay. The hay doesn't pay a lot. It doesn't. But what have we done, Teresa? We have tightened the belt about as tight as it can go. Yeah. We reduced the amount of fertilizer that we put on. The quality of the hay is not going to be as good as it should be. It will not be sold for animals because we decided, all of us decided, me and Teresa decided that it wasn't worth putting a lot into, because the profit margin on that has gotten quite thin. Between the nut behind the wheel, my son, the tires that go on the truck and trailer, which are expensive. A tire we used to pay $120 for is now almost $250 per tire. Tires on the tractor, $600 a tire. Right? 2 steering axle tires, $620 a tire. For 2 tires, $1,240 for 2 front tires. I need 8 rear tires. Now, I'm not going to buy Michelin tires for it this go around. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to go buy Summits. They're Chinese tire. I have to do it. What am I supposed to do? Instead of it being, instead of those tires being $480 or $600 a piece for Michelins or Continentals or whatever, I'm going to be able to get those tires somewhere around $300. So I'm going to be able to cut the price to, 2/3 or a third. Yeah, take a third off the price of those tires just to save money, because there just is no money left. And that brings me back to the tire on the Case windrower. You can't just say, okay, everything is kosher, everything is great, everything is wonderful, I'm just going to go buy tires and spend $700 on 2 rear tires for a windrower because I want to. Fortunately, I have tires that I've saved from other things. They're brand new. They were off of the fertilizer spreader, the Chandler fertilizer spreader. They're the same size tire, so and bolt pattern. We just bolted it right on, which was fine. I have four. Excuse me. I have 4 of those now. It's crazy how much money you can spend in a heartbeat here. Now, we have spare parts off of equipment that we stripped down for the Case windrower. The John Deere W235 is a bulletproof machine. I should knock on wood. It's bulletproof. I mean, I have had so little problems with that thing. When I say so little problems, I think, what did I put into that thing? I replaced a gearbox that I did not need to replace. And I have put in 2 fan clutches on that thing. What else did we do to that? I don't think we did anything. Change the oil in the hubs, the final drives, because it needed to be done. Did that yesterday. It takes a little more than a gallon of gear oil in each one of those hubs. Well, a bucket of gear oil is over $100. 5-gallon bucket of gear oil. And, it's over $100, but we use 2 gallons of it. So, whatever, that saves the hub. I recommend everybody do that. John Deere tractors take hydraulic in the hubs, remember this, not gear oil. If you put gear oil in there, make sure it's a synthetic because it's thinner. But if you put a heavy gear oil in the front of a John Deere final drive on the front wheel drive tractors, it will generate a shit ton of heat. And it will burn that oil, which will then take out the seals and it will leak. Only use hydraulic oil. If you want to put a little bit of, say, Lucas synthetic oil stabilizer in there, don't even bother. Don't bother because that is a long-stranded molecule, and the gnashing of the gears actually cut those molecules. And at first it'll be all sticky and, look like spider webs and stuff in your hands, but because that's the long-stranded molecule and that stuff. Once you shear that, it just turns into oil, and it's not even good lubricating oil because the molecules are not round. They don't roll like ball bearings. That's why a synthetic oil works very well in there. But neither here nor there. These are all expenses that you have to look into. We are only purchasing things that we absolutely 100% need. That's why when I planted the corn this spring, I had the idea of putting down the nitrogen. I pulled soil test, looked and saw what was there. Not terrible. Everything was good enough to get the corn crop up and running just fine. No concentration of nutrient in the row. I didn't put anything with the row in the row. No 2x2 nitrogen application, none of that stuff. Didn't do it. Don't have the capabilities of doing it, and I'm certainly not going to spend $20,000 on a corn planter to make $10,000 in revenue overall by doing that to the corn planter. So I do have an idea, and what I would like to do would be strip till, what you call strip till. I don't even want to till it. I just want to knife in fertilizer, not band it, but knife it into the soil about 2 weeks before I plant the corn crop this coming year, which is another unit and another burning of fuel and another, just another thing, which is easy enough to do. It's either I make a bander and band it over the top of where I'm going to be planting the corn, and with the GPS, I don't even have to get it in the ground. But if I have a concentrated area of fertilizer, I can reduce my fertilizer inputs in the corn by about a third. If I can take a third off of the top of the expense side of it on the corn, I have gained a third, that way. And do it. You can do it pretty quickly. You can, yeah. I mean, I got some ideas, and some people will say, why don't you just go buy a unit? Because they're $250,000. And if I can build my own or make something that works which I have every intention of making something that works, and then just getting a fertilizer tender in there and tending the custom blend that I will be putting banding over top of where I'm going to plant the corn. I want that all dissolved into the soil and ready to rock and roll before I actually get into the field. A little bit of that ESN along with it, so that nitrogen is there, small amount of nitrogen ahead of the planter, because I want it dissolved and breaking down by the biology in the soil before the seed corn ever touches it. I don't even want that seed to touch that fertilizer in a concentrated form, to avoid the burning of the roots. Now, it's not hard to do it. I mean, it really isn't hard to do it. Today's GPS technology is wonderful. It really is wonderful. So I go with the same tractor that I'm going to plant with, or the same GPS unit heading that I'm going to plant with. When I'm done, I will just go ahead and plant over top of what I've done. Really don't want to disturb the soil too much. We can do that with the vertical tillage machine after this is, after I've banded it. That will give me the seed bed that I want, right? The seed bed that I want. Now, years ago, my dad did this, and I didn't like it. I'm just going to be honest here. I didn't like what we were doing, but we did it, and it worked. We had an old 4-row John Deere 7000 corn planter, and it was just hammered dog shit by the time I was old enough to really understand and become a proficient crop farmer. You know, it was one of those things. He's like, the fertilizer's there, it'll be fine. But we were doing this at planting, and it did work. It wasn't perfect, but it did work. Now, just bear with me here. What he did was, because the disc openers were so shook, and my grandmother didn't want to spend the money on new disc openers, and well, the whole thing was shook. I mean, it was just shook. Those openers were just done. It wasn't placing the fertilizer where we wanted it anyway. So what he did was we took them off, and he hung the hoses straight down over top of where the corn was going to be planted, right? And at that time, we were disking. We did a portion of no-till and a portion of worked full tillage ground. And yes, my wife is coughing every 2 seconds. She is not feeling well. So instead of criticizing her, you could say, hey, I hope you're feeling well, feeling better in the next coming days. But that's just me, and I really feel that I was starting to get it, but I'm not getting it, thank God, because I guess I was tougher than her. I fended it off, right, dear? Good. But anyway, so we banded it over top of these rows, and the corn never really was like, hey, I've got all the nutrient that I need. It came up yellow, didn't look very happy, and then all of a sudden it would catch that fertilizer, and boom, you get a rainstorm or whatever, and boom, it would take off, and it was fine. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I have disc openers. We could run them in, make a bar on bearings, just bolt them suckers fast, or just a straight bar, because those disc openers do have their own bearings in them, but then you got to deal with that. But whatever. Just something that is like three slits, about that wide. Run that fertilizer directly behind that, just dropping it onto the ground. And then run those disc openers in a straight configuration about that deep. Just enough to cut through. Just slots. Boom. So you cut 3 slots that deep, right? That's actually going to soften the soil a little bit for the planter. And it's going to create channels for that fertilizer when you do get the next rainstorm to just go boop, right down into the ground. If I did this like 2 to 3 weeks ahead of planting, right? So I start in April. Say I start in April. Could be wet, doesn't much matter. Isn't going to make much of a difference, because the openers on the corn planter will crumble those if we have sidewall smear from these things. If we put it in too wet or whatever, the disc opener will open it up, and then the closing wheels will crumble the sidewall, and life will be good. But the fertilizer will have a concentrated area of right there. That's That's just my thought process. I'm not even sure whether this will work or not, or if I've even got the time to do it. But I do have the idea. I do have that idea. And I can use disc openers. I just gut it, weld a piece into it, widen it, and add 3 disc openers. Because they're sharp already, I don't need to open anything. I just need to cut 3 slots. 3 slots. So I can use the already spring-loaded unit that's already on the planter, make a yoke, attach it to that thing, and it should work. I don't want to put the fertilizer in the ground. I just want to set it on top so that it goes down in. Yes, kind of a weird idea, right? I could even offset them a little bit, just like degree offset, so that it kind of lifts and drops maybe, or just opens it up a little bit, tiny little bit, so that those granulars of fertilizer can go down in there. ESN and all these other. I might not even use ESN. I might even just use ammonium sulfate. And I've been thinking about this thing for a while. So how will I do this efficiently? Well, years ago, I saw a John Deere 7000 corn planter frame. Like, oh wow, a John Deere corn planter frame for a couple of $1,000. Should have bought it. I was going to buy it, and I was going to build my own planter off of that, but by the time I bought the row units, all brand new row units to put on there would have been way too expensive. But there are scores of these old things sitting in fence rows everywhere. A 12-row, front folding 7,000 John Deere corn planter frame with dry planter boxes on it, put toppers on it, and we're doing this cheap now. We're not doing it to be like, hey, look at me, I've got this brand new air seeder, top dress unit or side dress unit or strip till unit. That's what it would be. I don't even care if I can put the openers in it, right? Like, maybe I'll just leave the opener that's on there, and it'll open and close, but never put the fertilizer in the ground. I kind of just want it on the top, but I want to channel down. So once I do that, right, I build this thing, I go out in the field, I test it out, and I've got these bands that are this wide, just say 8 inches wide, all right? So I got 8-inch wide band of fertilizer. I don't need to put 600 pounds of, say, triple 19. Let's just use that for an example. I don't need to put 600 pounds of triple 19. I can get away with 250 pound there on that row. That will give me everything that I need. 1145, maybe 1145. I got plenty of phosphate in the ground, or ESN, maybe 10, 30, 10, something like that, with sulfur in the ammonium sulfate, whatever I need to grow that crop. If I can concentrate it over the row of corn, not in a high concentration where it's going to burn everything, that corn doesn't need to go and grow to the center of the row to scavenge for that nutrient. It's all right there at the top in the row, right where it needs to go, and the roots that need to go for water are going to go for water, and the nutrients will be right over top of that plant, and every time it rains, it'll just leach down into the soil. It's not in such a concentration that's going to burn the roots. And that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking to do. And it all goes back to money, right? So if I go and I buy a strip till unit, I'm looking at $200,000. That's, going to do a 24 row or 12 row strip till unit. It's $200,000. You buy a used one for $100,000, and I mean it's pretty used for $100,000, and you got to replace a lot of stuff. And by the time you're done replacing it, you end up with another $50,000 into it. So for $100,000 savings, you get somebody else's unit that needs to be repaired, or you go out and you buy an old John Deere corn planter frame, and you spend a little time. Even if you got a 6-row corn planter frame, I mean, at least you could drive down the road with it without having to fold it up. But a 12-row would do much better job for me. And you can put anybody in it. Hey, Teresa, I need you to go and apply this fertilizer in strips so that when we plant the corn, everything is there without disturbing the cover crop, without disturbing the soil too much, or at all for that matter. You don't have to disturb it at all. And if there is a cover crop, that's even better, because the cover crop is going to grab that nutrient. It's going to diffuse it is going to use it, is going to make it more available to the corn plant and its reproductive stage than it would be in the early stages. So those are my ideas to save money at the fertilizer plant and on equipment and whatever. Gonna do it. I do have a 7,000 John Deere corn planter, but it has no fertilizer boxes on it. So I need the fertilizer boxes, and I'm just going to look for something, say on Fastline, that is just hammered dog shit, and maybe I can find it for $3,000 or $4,000, and I can just take the row units off and have those for the 7,000 that I have, and maybe it'll have Martin row sweeps or stuff like that, whatever it has. And that would even be something too. If you set the Martin row, get this, if you set the row sweeps up and drop the fertilizer behind it, you set them up so that it digs down about yay big, deep, or just sweeps the grass out of the way, or the cover crop, or whatever you've got, and you drop it into that band, it'll be a concentration right there. Then you can plant right over the top of that. It worked. It worked for me years ago, so I have every faith. And we were putting like 400 pounds of, I think it was 12-24-24, is what we were actually banding over top of that corn. And then we would come back in with nitrogen, whether it was urea, or I think we were using a lot of urea at that time, spreading urea or ammonium sulfate on top for corn. And growing corn that way. Those were the days where you had a lot of pretty decent profit margin, and you could fuck up a little bit here and there and still pull a decent crop out of the ground. So, but those are my ideas, and I'm sure there's some guys that are on here saying, "You idiot, why don't you just go spend the money?" Because there's no money to spend. If you watch Cole the Corn Star's video, that's pretty much where we are as well. I'm fortunate enough to have the hay, which will buffer that. I will have cash flow when grain farmers don't have cash flow after they've sold their crop to pay their note back. I will still have the hay to sell, and I will still have cash flow, and I will still, be able to go on through the year that way. And we are looking at about, I was looking at the corn. I'd be happy at 150 bushel yield. That's what I'm looking for on corn, and I'd be happy with a 40-45 bushel yield on soybeans. I do believe I'm going to do a fair bit better on the soybeans than that, and I'm believing that the corn may or may not be as good as the 100. Depends on where you're at. I have a lot of tip dieback. It just isn't filling. We had that dry spell at the wrong time, and if I go out and do the projections that Cole did, I'm going to be somewhere between 140 and 160 bushel average. And that's about where I'm expecting it to be, 140 to 160. A lot of you guys are saying, oh my God, you're going to go bankrupt. Not going to go bankrupt over that because I don't have a $280 an acre land rent. Here, the ground is not very good. It's small fields. It's difficult to farm. It takes a lot of other inputs like lime. We've been putting lime down now regularly for the last 3 years. I've been putting down lime. I will be putting down more lime. The benefits of that lime are showing up this year better than they had in last year. So I'm just going to continue with lime and get these pHs up where they belong, get the biology and the biomass on top of the ground and the organic matter below the surface. I'm going to get that all in a balance on the best ground that I have and start to build the worst ground that I have. I've got ground that wouldn't produce 60 bushel corn, even if you put a fertilizer regimen to grow 220 bushels. It just will not support it. So that's why I'm in the hay business. And what I'm going to do now, because I've got all the row crop ground, the 1,400 acres of row crop ground has all had lime on it in some capacity or not. I am going to spoon feed lime onto it this coming winter for next year. And I'm going to start putting lime on the poorer ground in hopes to build it up that I get a better hay crop. And then in the possibility of growing corn there, we'll be able to do that because the pHs are so low and this ground has been so neglected. The calcium levels are in the toilet. The pH is in that 5 range. Just sucks. Couldn't afford to put lime on, or didn't need to want to put lime on, because when you're pulling 1.5 to 2 tons of hay off of it, Who cares? A ton and a half. Now, if I start putting lime on it in 2 years, I might be doing 2.5 to 3.5 tons of hay off of an acre. And I am also looking at rotating out of hay into row crops, and then where the row crops were, rotating them back into a high quality hay, whether it is Timothy, whether it is orchard grass, which I'm not keen on orchard grass, but if I do orchard, because I got to make orchard grass in May for the first cut, I don't want to have a lot of that. Timothy, I can wait until June when it heads out and then run it through the big baler. I know somebody that splits it, and I can make little bales out of big bales very quickly and, deal with that way, or just sell it outright to the dairy industry. You can use tarps to cover it, still have the mushroom industry to deal with the holy tarps. If you watch Bales Hay, he cusses about tarps all the time because he's trying to get the highest quality hay he can possibly make, and bad hay goes to the dump or burn or finds a beef farmer to give it away to, because he has his own beef cows, and that's a plus because he can feed that then. Whereas we have the mushroom industry, I can take the top bales that get discolored from moisture and the bottom bales that get discolored from moisture, and then have the center bales to sell for beef industry or whatever I want to do in. But these are things that we're doing to kind of offset the low pricing. I do believe, now don't quote me on this and do not take my advice if you don't feel like taking a major risk. I do not believe that the prices are going to continue to plummet. I feel that after the election in November, and let's hope and pray that we don't get the communist Kamala in office, because if you've been listening to her, you might think that she is new on the scene. She has been in close conjunction with the President of the United States for the last more than 3.5 years, and if she was going to, she has the power to influence the President of the United States. They're supposed to work together. He ultimately makes the decision, but he's not making any decisions. I don't know who's running the country, but it sure as hell isn't that old dead bag of skin that they prop up to do interviews and stuff like that and listen and then cringe when he opens his damn mouth. They've got somebody else as the puppeteer, and he's the puppet. And I do believe that it is Kamala, because you know what? Now she's saying that she's going to cut taxes. She ain't cutting taxes. If she was going to cut taxes, she'd have done that before. Oh, we're going to reduce energy costs. She has the power to do that right now. We're going to close the border. She's the border czar. And don't let anybody fool you. That broad was appointed the border czar. I watched the interview. Don't let them fool you into thinking that your lying eyes and ears did not see and hear what they told her that she was going to be. She has never done anything positive under this administration that she is second in command on or has a great influence over. She hasn't done it in the last 3.75 years. She's not going to do it for the next 4 years. If you are stupid enough to believe that horse-faced asshole is going to do anything positive for this country, I'm sorry. She's had 3.5 years to influence the guy that could do it. And I think she has. I think she actually has, and that's why we have what we have. So, think what you want about Donald Trump, but I lived under Donald Trump for 4 years, and I thought we had a safer country, a safer world, a better economy. We were all making money, and now we're not. Now we're not. And farmers feel it first, just so y'all know. And I've been on here for 53 minutes, and if you haven't watched Cole the Corn Star's video, go watch it. Skip through all the, watch the first pick and make fun of his Crocs. Why is he wearing Crocs? I mean, why is he looks like a dork from hell. I mean, Cole's probably a really cool guy, and he is. I think he's a little too big for his britches, and he is going to get slapped down by farming life. It does happen. We all seem to get through it, though, when there's a really bad year, and then when there's a really good year, the government tries to take everything from us in taxes, especially under Democrat rule. We go and we buy equipment and spend more than we should, and then end up right back in the same thing. So we are our own worst enemy. Now, right now is the time to cinch that belt up about as tight as you can, and you can't even stop at a McDonald's because it costs you $20 for 3 freaking people. 2 adults and a child is over $20, $28. at McDonald's. You know, it used to be a cheap place that a housewife could take their 3 kids that are driving her nuts. They could go play in the Play Palace. You notice they're not in there anymore. McDonald's is no longer a family fun restaurant like it used to be. It used to be. I never went there as a kid, but I did take Timothy and Haley and Joe when they were kids, and they got to go on the slides and in the ball pits and all that stuff. But all those are gone. They ripped them out, threw them away. They don't want you in there. It's a liability for one, and for two, nobody wants to sit down at a restaurant. They all want to get on the idiot box here, and I think I have it. I never used it, but I'm pretty sure that I have the McDonald's. Oh, there it is. I have the McDonald's app. It's right there. See it? I never used it. And the reason I got it was because it was on TV. Hey, get the McDonald's app, and then, you can just go through the drive-thru and your food will be ready. Okay. This is when I was hauling a lot of hay. Timothy wasn't hauling so much hay, and me and Teresa were hauling hay. I was like, yeah, let's just get the McDonald's app. Well, I got the McDonald's app, tried to order on it, pissed me off. I said, fuck it. I should just take it off my phone because I don't need it anymore. And if you ever go into a McDonald's today and they got that stupid kiosk, I almost put my fist through one of them. They suck. But anyways, with that being said, don't eat at McDonald's, don't eat at Burger King, don't eat at Wendy's, don't eat at any of these shitty restaurants because there's no meat in the food anymore. They're using the crappiest crap because the high price of everything. If they made the meal like they did when I was young, say in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was a kid, if they made that meal, that very same meal, using those very same ingredients in the same proportions that they did then, the McDonald's Happy Meal would be $12. The Big Mac meal would be $20 alone. They have had to take meat out, and if you don't know this, and we're going to talk about this for the next couple of minutes, if you don't know this, in order to increase the yield of the cow, let's put it that way, the yield of the cow or the yield of the chicken, they pump it full of, the chicken they pump through full of saline water, and they freeze it. The hamburger, they pump it full of water and blue slime or pink slime or whatever the hell slime they use. That is an emulsifier. It holds everything together. So when they pump all this stuff in there, they're basically gluing the meat together enough so that it can make it out of the freezer into the cooker, microwave, Burger King flame broils there. So it has to hold together enough to get onto that sandwich. And then if you take that hamburger and pull it apart, it falls apart because they have reduced the amount of meat that's in it. If you've ever eaten one, you'll know this. You'll be like, why is this? There's like nothing here. Oh, and the Big Mac, they should call it the Little Mac. And if they made it the size of the Big Mac of my generation, it was a big hamburger. There was two all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. That was it. There was 2 all beef patties. It wasn't full of crap. Now it's 2 kind of meat patties with glue and water. Now you're probably wondering, why are they putting water in there? So if you go in and you buy a quarter pounder, this is even more evident when you buy a quarter pounder, because I decided I would switch away from the Big Mac because it didn't taste right and it didn't have anything. And I only eat this stuff when I'm like on a long haul and in a hurry to get to where I'm going or to get home or whatever. It's just easier to go and to a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Wendy's or an Arby's or any of these places and just go through there. And I've gotten to the point now that if I find a Cracker Barrel, that's where I'll go. And even that food isn't as good as it used to be. It isn't. It just isn't. They've had to accommodate the inflationary economy that we live in, and people that don't have the money that they had 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they still want their restaurant to be open, so they are cutting corners. Now, the water in the chicken, the saline solution, is that chicken, before it is cooked, has got to weigh a certain amount. So if you take a quarter pound of beef, right, a quarter pounder hamburger, have you noticed that the bun got smaller and the patty got smaller? Because that's from shrinkage, right? So this binding agent that they put in this beef patty, this blue or pink slime or whatever the hell it is, along with the water chips, makes that quarter pounder a quarter pound before they cook it. when they cook it, whatever oozes out of it, whether it's the water chips melt and the binding agent shrinks that patty down. You ever notice that the patty actually looks kind of like a hockey puck when it used to look like beef before? It looks nothing like the picture that they got on the billboard that you're supposed to order from. But yeah, you've got that. It's because it's so pumped full of water, they have to bind it together when it shrinks to be able to take their spatula and get it off and onto your bun. And if you've ever watched them make them, they're like, they use these tongs now. I used to use their hands. But they use these tongs, and they slip it underneath it and then clasp it in the middle and then put it in your bun, because if they grabbed it by the edge, it would break and you'd have a broken hamburger, and then it's no good. So that's why they're doing that. I don't work in the fast food industry, but I do observe what I'm going to eat. So I don't eat that much, once in a while. I like McDonald's French fries. I always have. And I've already gone through a McDonald's drive-through and said, can I have a large fry? Because I love them, and I'll get a soda and a large fry. And sometimes chicken nuggets, but they taste like cornbread and malathion, if you ask me. But there's only chicken parts in cornbread, and they taste so good until they cool off. And then they dry out and shrink down to, I don't know, the consistency of this telephone, which is garbage. But I've been talking for over an hour now. I've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you watched this to the end, give it a thumbs up and say, Hail Comrade Kamala in the comment section. Hail Comrade Kamala. Because if we get that, that's the road we're going down. It's going to be worse than the previous 4 years. Because Joe was supposed to be a moderate, and then when you get a moderate and then a communist, socialist, whatever you want to call her, communist, socialist, can't call her a fascist, because fascism is to the right and socialism is to the left. So when you hear people saying, oh, a socialist, fascist, that's two sides of the spectrum. But we won't go there. We don't need to. What we will do is we'll say Comrade Kamala in the comment section, and people will be like, what are you talking about? Down with Comrade Kamala. There you go. Have a nice day. Hope you don't stop at a McDonald's or Burger King, because you will be very, very disappointed.